Coming up on Mountain Hermeneutics, progressive Christianity. It's a Christianity movement that seeks to reinterpret traditional Christian beliefs, practices in light of modern knowledge, social justice, and inclusivity. It emphasizes importance of critical thinking, open dialogue, and cultural relevance in interpreting scriptures and understanding the teachings of Christ. That sounds really nice, doesn't it? Somehow we'll figure out to make it not. Anyway, keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
So because black people said it, now you believe it?
Well, yeah, I'm black, man. I don't know. Yeah. So if Brian was black, I would have believed him a long time ago. So I do it for money. Like,
I do it for less.
So this part won't be in the show.
Prob's not.
Yeah. Because you're handsome and can get away with anything you want, you piece of crap.
It's worked so far.
right.
Yeah.
Fellas, what's happening?
Hey,
Hey, yo.
So it's Sunday. That's fun.
Yeah.
Sunday.
All day.
All
Some
day
call,
on
some would
Sunday.
call it the Sabbath.
Some would.
No,
And
that's
the
yesterday.
fact that we're doing these works, we should be fucking struck down immediately.
Sabbath is Saturday.
We just didn't keep. Yeah, there you go. And yesterday I was at a track meet in Walnuts, California. The Mount Sac Relay is kind of a big deal. Lots of who's who. If you pay attention to track and field, a lot of great ones are there, including like I saw a lot of high school stuff. Dudes that were in high school that were running. Let's put it this way: one kid ran the 200 meter as a high school sophomore that would have broke Cooper's alma mater's record in the 200 meter. I'm like, and he's just starting to grow. But in that, young Mr. Bibbs, he I used to have lots of favorite athletes, Daryl Strawberry and Bo Jackson, Fernando Valenzuela, Magic Johnson. Now Cooper Bibbs is unequivocally my favorite athlete of all time. And
That's a wholesome take.
Even Kobe Bryant. I like Cooper Bibbs more than Kobe Bryant. I know. So, some would call that blasphemous here in the Southern California region.
As an athlete, you mean?
As an athlete.
You know what? I'm convinced I also like Cooper Bibbs more than Kobe Bryant.
Oh, snap.
Me too.
It's growing. It's like a snowball rolling down the hill.
Put me down for that.
He ran 10.07 yesterday. So he's now a 10-0 runner. That was good enough for 10th in the world. So he zero doubt he'll be competing in the Olympic trials, and we'll see if he can get on Team USA. So good times, good future to be had by all. So we'll see how it works out.
We're cheering for him from atop Mount Hermeneutics for sure.
Yeah.
Matt, what's up, man?
Man, was a little bit of travel. Was in Chicago doing some work, and for those that don't know, this isn't our day job, so we actually have to have real jobs.
They're
off,
like, thank God.
I was off.
Andrae looks like he's actually eaten meals before, so clearly this is not his day job.
So I had a little travel and had a little snafu with my travel, and I booked my flights on the wrong day, so I had to scurry to get home. And then my dad came up from San Antonio, so Mike Moore's here in town, and did that. We spent some time together, and that's a bit about it. A little family time, just kind of hanging out. Nobody runs fast in my family, so we're just kind of walking around, doing our thing.
We're just walking around, living, standing upright.
Brian, what do you think? What's going on with you this week?
Gosh, I don't even want to say. It just sounds so losery. Like I haven't personally made any fastest people in the world. So
you and I have that in common.
Yeah. I had plans to do like important, responsible, grown-up things this weekend, but I binged Fallout instead. That's what I did.
The new series?
The new series?
You dig it?
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
It's
I want to enjoy it also. I'm looking forward to watching it.
I've heard that there's a lot of subtle references and not so subtle references to the video game, and if you didn't play, you wouldn't know what the hell they're talking about.
That's entirely possible.
I played a little bit of Fallout 4 like a million years ago, so I didn't like I understood the premise, but I didn't catch those references. It's
I think Fallout in general is what he means, though.
Like if you
Like
haven't
the
played,
game series broadly, not necessarily Fallout 4.
yeah, I'm just saying that's my experience with
You
the
never played
Fallout game
Fallout
series.
Vegas or
No,
Fallout? Really?
I
Okay.
played Fallout 4. That was it. But the show, it's very well done. I enjoyed it a lot. It's essentially capitalism is evil, and
Mm,
it's what prevents us from developing a cold fusion fueled utopia, if not for those greedy, scheming, evil capitalists
I mean,
who.
that could also be true.
it could be, but
Mm,
I would probably lean more toward those evil bureaucratic uh crony capitalist government people, you know,
But
fascists.
so I've also heard that about the capitalist thing, and I don't want any spoilers because I want to watch the show. But like the show is also about capitalism because like bottle caps are pretty important. Like it's not like
um,
everybody's not living in like commune and not having there's not trade,
yeah,
right?
bottle caps are the currency they use in this world, but
Right.
that's but this is a like a post-apocalyptic dystopia
Hmm.
though that was brought to you by capitalism.
Mm.
So
But my point is then they fall back to yet more capitalism.
yeah,
That's I
Weird.
just anyway.
You have to
Anyway,
have currency.
yeah.
Weird. You have to have
Yeah.
something to trade,
That's my point. It's just,
something of
everybody's not
value
just
to
being
get
like
something.
utilitarian, whatever, and just doing stuff, right? Anyway.
yeah. It sneaks up on you though. They
Yeah.
don't
Okay.
lead with that. They get you invested, and then
And
they're like,
I don't mind if a show's trying to tell a story, make a point if it's subtle. Right? Like I'm okay with that. If it's like, oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, fine. Let's just go on with it. As
ah,
long as they're not just cramming it down my throat, right?
I almost think that's like more like uh, I don't have a problem with people telling stories that reflect their values, even
Right.
if I hate their values. I
Right.
don't like
Sure.
it's not realistic to expect them to do art that is not in keeping with their values. But I just think it should be acknowledged and noted, because if you're not aware of the programming is working on you. I'm more concerned about people sort of subconsciously internalizing these ideas where like in every movie they watch or every TV show, the villains are always these greedy, scheming capitalists, and the good guys are, the they're fighting for the common good, which is defined as anti-capitalism or whatever. But and I think that's why we I think that's why our culture is the way that it is, that there are so many stories that have this subtle messaging that programs these attitudes in people, and they don't really know why they have them, but they have them and they'll fight for them. And um
Do you think that's recent?
I think I think it's
I
the
know that it's
default.
always existed in Hollywood, but there used to be stories of resilience and stories of self-reliance and stories of heroism that was not about, you know, down with them and eat the rich, right? It was, Westerns is a really good, John Wayne movies and some old school
Well,
stuff of that nature.
but that was the patriarchy. That was
Oh, right,
um
right. So once
that
I
you
mean,
we need to have you know 90-pound women and who are the heroes, who can single-handedly defeat six Navy SEALs all on their own, to show in order to condition these attitudes in the public that we're all equal and biology doesn't matter. But
well,
anyway,
There's been these memes floating around on the internet a bunch, right? And they're real. It's actually it aggravates the hell out of me, and it basically is alluding to the fact that Christ uh, had dinner with criminals, bad people, right? With
He
prostitutes
he
and
hung out with sinners.
murderers and sinners, right?
Yeah.
And people post these memes kind of like from the perspective that, well, he was okay with them. So all of you Bible beating Christians need to be okay with sinners. And they kind of missed the point that the intention wasn't that, he was just going to hang out with these people indefinitely. They were going to indefinitely be this way, right? Like there's an expectation that having that dinner, having that supper, having that interaction with these people, they would be changed, and that they would then become appropriate. They would become holy. They would become devout. They would become,
They
Christian
repent.
without that word. Right. But it seems like these memes are like being a direct representation or embodiment of kind of the progressive state of humanity, and this need for everything to be focused on them versus focused on outside. I mean, what do you guys think? Was one driving the other? Is this the tail wagging the dog? Is Christianity driving culture to be different, or is culture driving Christianity to be different? I mean, do you guys have a thought on that?
I mean, I think the world is always trying to get Christians to conform to it, while Christians who are faithful should be getting the world to conform to Christianity. So yeah, both and yeah.
I mean,
Does
but
that make sense?
it does. It just seems like it's more now. And I don't know if that's a function of social media, probably, right? Or is it a function of our Overton window, like moving at a never before seen pace? It's hard. Maybe it's just because we're becoming older, right? And we're reaching that get off my lawn kind of stage in our lives where we're the older guys, and we're set in our ways now, and we've already pushed all the buttons and tried all the different angles, and we're coming back to what it is we think is right. Is that a fair take? Because I don't know. Like I sit and watch politics, and I feel the same way. I'm like, were politics always like this? And then I got to think, in the 40s and the 60s, it was probably pretty progressive, right? With civil rights movement, equal rights era, and those kinds of things. But I don't know. It feels like it's faster now. It's different now.
Um, well, progressive. That's such a loaded term that I
What do you
hate to
mean?
use it. Well, when you progressive, it means, well, it has an idea of progress. We're trying to get somewhere we want to be. Political progressivism that's the conceit of progressivism. But what they really mean is, communism. That they want. Progressives use terms like late stage capitalism, and they have this idea of this utopia where where we have equal outcomes, and there's no wealth inequality, and the patriarchy has been toppled, and there's no it's this sort of secular paradise. And I don't think that's progress. I think that's it's regressive.
But
It's like a go ahead.
I was going to say, isn't progress relative to the beholder?
Well, yeah, it presupposes that there's a destination that we're all trying to reach.
Right.
Where a conservative could but it's always set in opposition to conservatism.
Right.
A conservative would say, progress is following the Constitution and equality of opportunity, but a meritocracy. When people use terms like progressive or liberal, and value loaded language like that, it presupposes that, well, we're on the side of liberty and progress, and if you oppose our agenda, well, you're against progress, you're against liberty. So I refuse to use those terms. I just say leftist. But yeah, the conceit of progress, as it kind of infects Christianity, it's this idea that, I mean, it's essentially unbelief masquerading as belief. It's an attempt to get Christianity to conform to the culture, and implicit in that attempt is the belief that the Bible isn't really divinely inspired. God didn't write it. It doesn't come with his authority. If God exists at all, he's not represented by the Bible. This is just a man-made set of traditions and beliefs that people are, they're trying to reach God. They're documenting their best understanding of God, but it's not really of God, which, if Jesus rose from the dead, then only God could do that. If God did that, then he is the Messiah, and that validates the overall biblical narrative and validates the authority of the apostles and bearing witness to that. Well, rather, them bearing witness tells us that it happened, and that God is real, not just God, but the God of Israel. Progressive
Yeah,
Christianity,
you almost went down an apostolic succession path, didn't you?
no.
Well, okay,
I
so
think you did, but go.
I mean,
What, Dre?
what, let's. I think that sin is a really good topic, as it goes to progressive Christianity versus, we'll call it, traditional Christianity. Brian, can you define sin in, traditional biblical circles?
I would say anything that is contrary to the will of God. Sin in human behavior, it's putting our faith in in something other than God for reward. We believe that behaving in a way other than obedience is going to benefit us in some way. So
Okay, interesting, because if you are a progressive Christian, and if we have any progressive Christians watching this right now or listening, uh, your comments would be appreciated, just because I'd never actually met one. So anything that I know about progressive Christianity itself is something that I've read or something I've seen on TV or seen in a documentary. I don't know any of these people or you people. Is that offensive? You people?
you people, what do you
What do you
mean?
mean, you people?
What do you mean you people? I mean progressive
I
Christian.
just watched that the other day. Anyway,
What do you mean you people? So, uh, but a progressive Christian would often define sin as actions or attitudes that cause harm, injustice, or suffering. They emphasize the importance of personal and collective responsibility in addressing these harms and working towards reconciliation and healing. So basically, if you don't hurt anybody and you're not causing any suffering, then it's not a sin. And in order to fix these sins, we've all got to get together, like the Parent Trap. Let's get together. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, that's a weird reference. But so,
that was super weird.
but
What is
we got to get
happening?
we got to get together and use democracy to find out the best way for society to move forward, to stop the pain and suffering. So,
Where did you get that definition just now? You don't mind me
internet,
asking. But it's like a progressive Christian site.
uh, ish, yeah,
Okay.
Chat GPT.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that there's no reference to God in any of that.
I think that was the point.
And that's
Right.
like, if we
And
morality
all the sites
itself.
kind of say the same thing, so this is
Yeah.
just more concise version
Yeah.
of all the sites.
Yeah, smart. It's probably the best place to go. But yeah, I mean, a morality that isn't, for there to be moral standards, there has to be an authority, an arbiter of morality. For them to define sin in a way that doesn't invoke God at all, well, then who's the authority? It's just their own their own personal set of values.
I, I think this might be my personal favorite take on sin. They have a thing called social sin. They recognize that sin is not solely an individual matter, but also has social and systemic dimensions. They acknowledge that the societal structures and institutions can perpetuate injustice, inequality, and oppression. Therefore, addressing and challenging these systemic sins is seen as a crucial in promoting social justice and equality. So not only is there sin that harms people, there's also social sin. They have a take on grace and forgiveness, um, and they believe in self-reflection and accountability, and liberation and wholeness. And again, in all of that, God's will is nowhere in there, and that's an interesting because I think if you just took out the sin portion and just called it communism, it
Well,
might
so you
fit.
know what this links to? So when we were talking about progressivism and progressive Christianity, I was looking up New Age Christianity,
Okay.
and I'm on newagechristianity.org, by the way, for those following along at home. Uh, and at the top, they have a couple of blogs about who they are, and one of them is oneness and I am, right? And so I was like, well, that's interesting. So I clicked on it, and at the end, it's a short blog, but basically it says, no one can give you your, I'm using air quotes, I amness, not even God. You have to believe in it yourself. And then at the end of it, it says, uh, who are we? We are God 2.0. So I think that kind of logic tracks Dre with what you were just reading and talking about, right? Because they don't need to talk about God because they see themselves as the center of the universe, right? So that
Yeah.
whole, sin against people is sin to them because they're more important than God. There is no God. It's the collective.
Well, it sounds like pantheism, um, which goes
It
back
sounds more
to,
like Gnostic. Sounds more like Gnosticism to me.
well, Gnosticism is kind of a subset of pantheism. I mean, there's overlap. You know how I'm always saying that there's only two religions,
Mhm.
monotheism and pantheism.
Yep.
And it seems like, if in referring back to our episode on the occult, all occultism, it tends to kind of go back. Occultism mutated into New Ageism, and it kind of defaults just to pantheism, which pantheism, Hinduism being the most developed version, the most developed iteration of it. Everything that the Bible teaches is good and offers us life and salvation. Hinduism and pantheism in general says the opposite. Like the goal of in Hinduism is to escape the cycle of samsara, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. You can accumulate good karma in your life and get born into a higher go up the chain of being in your next life. And if you're a really bad person, you might get reborn as a cockroach in the next life. So you're always going up and down the chain of being, but the ultimate goal is to get off the ride, is to achieve enlightenment by realizing that the illusion of individual identity, that you are God, God is you. Here, there's no you thinking that you're an individual person is like a wave thinking that it's distinct from the ocean. So the goal is to realize that you are one with everything else, and then you get off the ride, and then you're reabsorbed into the undifferentiated all, and that's the goal. That's immortality in life. In the Bible, so basically, like, life itself, existence itself, is a curse to be escaped. That's the bottom line. Salvation consists in escaping from the cycle of existence. in the Bible, God creates the physical universe. At every stage says it's good. At the end says it's very good. He creates by the distinction of opposites. He creates time by separating light from darkness. He creates space by separating the waters above from the waters below. Creates the earth by separating the dry land from the waters. The all of the sea and air and animal life, they each reproduce according to their kinds. They differentiate. And at each stage, God says it is good, and then creates man. Man falls. He's cursed to mortality, and God tells him, "For dust you are, and to dust you shall return." But salvation is in physical bodily resurrection to eternal life in these bodies on this earth, restored and renewed. So, but hell is being separated from God, being separated from the goodness of existence. So it's interesting that like these two things are opposites. Like what salvation in one is damnation in the other, but all occultism and New Ageism tends to just turn into Hinduism. What's insidious about it is that it uses biblical language. There's some of the stuff that you said that I can understand why there would be alarm bells that would go off, but it could be justified within a biblical worldview, but it just depends on what's meant there. Like it doesn't. I'm not saying humans are God 2.0, but in Genesis 1, the scholar John Walton, in his Lost World series, he explains how Genesis 1 is God setting up creation as his temple. In the ancient world, a temple was a microcosm of the universe, and the idol on the altar was representative of that God ruling the universe. In Genesis 1, God sets up creation as a temple, but the idol that he places in it to represent him is man. It's what it means to be made in God's image. We are God's image bearer, God's presence in creation. So in a sense, like being made in the image of God means that we represent God in creation, and that is an important part of the biblical worldview. And it's something I think that we're lacking in Christianity, but other religions, particularly New Ageism, kind of embraces but kind of runs with and goes to bad places. So
Well, I mean, they believe that the universe itself is God. So
right.
we all come out of it. So they believe in a divine power, but their central belief isn't the divine, because it's all divine. We're all interconnected. It's all the oneness. And not until you become enlightened and get to the new spot where you are now one. And I kind of think that's probably the basis of the whole disembodied spirit going to heaven. I think that's the new ageism back then was kind of incorporated into our biblical text, and that's where culturally we believe in the heaven, because you go back to be with the divine. You are the divine. You
Yeah.
ascend.
And it's yeah, and that's what I meant when I was
Yeah,
saying that
I know you
not
did.
yeah.
I think all of these things kind of have in common is that we demote God. I mean, even so, a lot of the central tenets of progressive Christianity is talking about Jesus as a man, so as an ethicist and as a moral teacher, but it's not about his divineness. It's the fact that he recognizes that he's divine, and I am the way means that you can be like him if you just open your eyes to what he sees. So we elevate man, and we demote God, and we become one. And again, it's about us. It's about us kind of worshiping ourselves.
Right. Yeah. No, I
And
think I agree with that completely. It's funny because it's only a subtle miss, right? Like the whole attempting to be like God, leave him on the pedestal. And then it's about that never ending attempt to try to be as similar to, knowing you're always going to fall slightly short. Is a very different mentality than if we lower him, then it's easy for us to leapfrog, and then we don't have to worry about all the
Yeah.
rules and all the
I,
constraints, right? It
I
become, and then it's
yeah,
just easy mode.
I find it pretty interesting slash fascinating that if you talk to New Age people that kind of blend Christianity and the Course in Miracles by Marianne Williamson, Eckhart Tolle. These are guys who I've read their books. I've enjoyed them speaking, and maybe it's because I wasn't Christian, so it's like it's one of those things that are like, yeah, I get it, it's cool, but kind of forgot where I was going with. Oh, they quote a lot from John, and they quote a lot from Paul, and I think it's
I
because
bet they don't
Paul.
quote James very much.
No, James isn't their guy. Because Paul talks about the Christ figure, right? So you'll hear a lot from these types
Christ
of
in
people,
you, the hope of glory, and
the Christ consciousness, right?
right.
You become Christ-like, and all they start. You got to be Christ-like, right? And if you're walking to a garden variety Christian, you're like, hey, why aren't you being Christ-like? They were like, "Oh, you're right. I should act like and follow in the footsteps of Christ." But that's not what they mean. They mean, no, you be Christ-like, because Paul says those types of things and elevate him to something that's beyond, and never talks about the teachings of Jesus.
Well,
But
and
then,
that actually links right back to the memes I was talking about, right? Because
right.
it's the whole be like Christ, hang out with sinners and stop being so judgmental. And it's like,
Well, it's because because a sin is only causing harm, right? So that goes back to the definition of sin itself. Don't cause harm. Even if these people are harming themselves, they're not harming
mhm.
you. Therefore, they're not actually sinning, because there's also this thing in this train of thought that there's like multiple realities. So if you don't see that those things are happening over there because of the ego spirit or the ego mind, or they use the term illusion a lot, that that's not really happening.
What does that
So
mean? The
this
illusion.
world this world is all an illusion. This is you have the metaphysical world um is just something to escape from. So if it's not really happening, and if you can be enlightened and become one with the universe, and all these bad things fall away, which is why you live in the now, because there is no future and there's no past. Like you just live in the right now. Um,
Right. If everything is God, then I think I talked about I think when we had the conversation before, I mentioned the Bhagavad Gita. Are you guys familiar with the Bhagavad Gita?
Mhm.
Um,
It's on my bookshelf.
okay. It's I see what you did there. So the Bhagavad Gita, it means the song of God. It's a portion of the Mahabharata, which is one of two epic poems in Hinduism. The other being the Ramayana. But
When
the
you say
Bhagavad,
epic, you mean it's big, not
it's big,
it's like not it's not awesome.
but it's like I mean that as a genre. It's like it's an epic the way that like the Homer's epics are.
Right.
It's
oh,
an epic.
so it's
I'm not
sick.
I'm not saying it's legendary. I
Right.
mean, I'm saying
Exactly. It's not like
um but I mean it's a good read. I mean it's but the Bhagavad Gita, it's probably one of the most important texts of Hinduism. It tells the story of this prince Arjuna, who is about to go to war with his with a rival clan. They're his kinsmen, and he is beside himself with grief because he has to go slaughter all of his kinsmen, and he doesn't want to do it because obviously who wants to do that? But his charioteer is a guy named Krishna, who, as it turns out, is an avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu being the second person of the Hindu godhead. Um, the Hindu the Hindu name for God, for ultimate reality, is Brahman, and Brahman encompasses everything and everyone, the entire universe, but he manifests as in each one of us, but in the gods and in nature. But the penultimate manifestation of Brahman is Brahma, the creator, Vishnu the sustainer, and Shiva the destroyer. Vishnu is his avatar. He's there talking to Arjuna through his avatar Krishna, and Krishna explains to him that it's not all that bad. It's his karma, because he's a member of the warrior caste, and that's what his karma is, to go and do that. But I can't remember. I've been trying to find the commentary where I found this. I thought it was in Gandhi's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. It might have been one of those Hare Krishna things they give you at the airport, or they used to back when they did that at the airport.
I haven't seen a Christian in a long time.
Yeah, it's been probably since the 80s or the 90s since
They were
since
big
I've
in
seen
the
one.
80s. That was like a thing.
Yeah, but in the 90s, I did take one of their Bhagavad Gita commentaries, but in a commentary I read, but something Gandhi said is close enough to it that I'm comfortable saying this. But the description was that because everything is Brahman, a surgeon cutting out a tumor with a scalpel is morally ultimately no different than a robber killing someone with a knife. Because individual identity is an illusion, morality is an illusion. God, just as good comes from God, so does evil. It's all Brahman. It's all God. So morality itself is ultimately an illusion. What matters is fulfilling your karma in this lifetime. So, oh, and he rebukes him because Arjuna shouldn't distinguish between killing his kinsman and killing anybody else in battle, because everybody is Brahmin, and his kinsman shouldn't get that special consideration. But it's pretty, like, it's always framed as being sort of winsome and pious sounding, but it's pretty horrifying when you consider the moral implications of that. Like I said, everything in pantheism is upside down from what it is in monotheism. Salvation is damnation, good is evil. They're just antithetical to each other. But to you guys' points before about the Christ consciousness and finding the divinity within, they can make it sound biblical, because you do find that kind of language in John and in Paul about Christ in you and becoming the children of God, stuff like that. The difference is that in Christianity, in order to, like, you are supposed to become, you're supposed to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. You're supposed to grow in Christ likeness. You are supposed to grow into the likeness of Christ, because God's nature is within you.
Uh-oh. I mean, how is that different?
In Hinduism and pantheism, God's nature is in you by default. It's a matter of discovering it and destroying your ego to realize that you've been God all along. In Christianity, it's in recognize you have to recognize that no, you are an individual. Your ego is not an illusion. Individual identity is good, and you don't want to destroy that. That's life. But you are corrupt, and you have to repent. But if you put your trust in him, he puts his nature in you, and then it grows in you. But you don't have him in you by default, and you're not identical to God. You have his nature, and that's a world of difference. So yeah, so basically, and it's another thing they flip, but because they kind of intersect rhetorically, they're spoken of as if they're the same thing, but they're actually opposites.
Hmm.
So
You guys want to play a game?
I love
okay.
games.
So this game is, did this excerpt come from a new age author, or did it come from a Christian author? And I think these passages will illustrate how similar thoughts can be in the new age world and the Christian world using kind of their vernacular. Here's the first one.
Okay.
Was this a is this a Christian writer or is this a New Age
are we
writer?
taking turns? Do we need to buzz
No,
What
in
does
on
both
that?
answer? What is we're gonna
yeah, just
answer out?
both answer.
I'm
Many
gonna
understandings and false beliefs about Christ will be clear if you realize there is no past or future in Christ to say that Christ was or will be a contradiction. In terms, he was a man who lived 2,000 years ago and in his true nature said, before Abraham was, I am. And he did not say, I already existed before Abraham was born. He is and he didn't say that he was God, and he said that I am. Is that a New Age author, or is that a Christian author? I mean,
I'm
he
gonna say New
Jesus
Age.
Jesus Jesus said, I am that I am.
I'm gonna say New Age.
I'm gonna say New Age.
Yeah, it's New Age. It's, in fact, that was Eckhart Tolle of the Book of Power, which I have that book, and I think I heard on audio one time when I was driving really far away. And actually, I stole some of these quotes from a YouTuber named Melissa Dougherty, who's a Christian. Shout out Melissa Dougherty. I've just discovered you in the last couple of days, and I might be watching some more of your videos. Anyway, uh, okay, let's see. Next one up. Thou shalt not commit adultery means what it says not to commit adultery is fundamentally important because it is found in the sanctity of family. But of course, there's a great deal more in that. There is such much symbolism in the Old Testament, and we have our various symbols as well. However, you must remember that people, the Old Testament, were forbidden to make images, and they took literally, Moses did not want them to make statues because in that age we would have worshiped them. And he knows, so he made it a hard and fast rule that statues, no engraven images, is in this. Is this a New Age teacher or is this a Christian teacher?
I'm gonna go Christian. I don't necessarily agree with what I heard, but I think it's Christian.
I'm also go with Christian.
This is a New Age teacher, and it's a guy named Emmett Fox, and he's a really well-known teacher. I guess he's one of these big New Age guys, and he's got a book on the whole Ten Commandments, and he takes a metaphysical view of the view of the scriptures. So basically, it, it looks like, hey, he didn't really mean that, that we're gonna worship these things. I think Brian gave a really good description of the ancient Near East, of how people would make these images and believe that gods actually came into
Came
them,
into
and
the
that's why
item. Yeah. Yeah.
into the idol. Uh, so
Which yeah, that well, I was gonna do a tangent on the Eucharist, but I probably shouldn't.
okay, all right. There are three main answers to the question, why are we here? Maybe the easiest way to think about our options is, first, there was someone behind all godism and personal mind who created and rightfully governs the world of material and immaterial things, including other minds. Second, there's something behind it all, mindism, which is material and immaterial things, including other minds, are all illusions. Third, there is no one and no thing behind all matterism, just a material universe of metaphysical things with no other minds and no visible immaterial things that are all complicating the equation some of you think you might know. Is this a Christian author or is this a New Age author?
Before I answer with my guess, I don't have a freaking clue what that person was trying to say.
So I
So I
guess
just
there's three ways. There's either a god that controls all the minds, right, and all the things, material and immaterial. Uh, Option two, where was it? Is there something behind all the mindism, which material and immaterial things, including other minds, are all illusions. And third, there is no one and no thing. There's just matterism and in the universe and physical things and not physical things. Those are
It's
three
a new
ways.
age. It's got to be a new age person then.
I'm gonna go New Age.
It's a Christian. So basically, he's the number one option. I believe this author thinks is correct.
He's
So
saying there's only three options.
There's three options of what these things are, and
yeah,
I think that when you look at some of the wording, and that's the point, right? Like,
well, who was that author?
Brian wants to validate that he was a Christian or not. Brian's gonna be like, that guy's not a damn Christian. It's Bart
Greg. It's Greg Cockle.
Huh.
And he's got a master's degree in philosophy and apologetics. So I think the philosophy part is, I think the point of those three questions is that the first couple had kind of biblical quotes and they kind of skewed them. And the third one was talking about things that New Age people talk about in philosophy, but is a Christian. Obviously, it's a cherry picked excerpt from the book.
It would have been a very long conversation that would have wound you back to option one is the answer, right?
I'm not sure Greg Kokel's theology is representative of Christianity, though, and that's kind of what threw me off. I was kind of leaning toward it being a Christian that I just disagreed with,
right?
But anyway, so
I don't think that's a very.
Here's the last one. Creation
is that a I knew you'd say that kind of?
Yeah, it is. Well, and not necessarily I knew you'd say that, but I thought they could be an objection because if somebody with bad theology wrote a Christian book, then Brian would put him in the same category as other non-Christians.
Right.
But creation was done and complete, and that anything could possibly be created already exists. Now, 5,000 years later, quantum physics has confirmed that every single possibility of anything and everything already exists. And they quote Genesis 2, verses 1, the creation of the heavens and the earth, and everything in them was complete. Period. Is that a New Age author or is that a Christian author?
That could go either way, because like
I think all of these could go either way, but I mean the first two are kind of more obvious, but
like I'm not sure there's enough information there to know like that a Christian could have said that, but
right, and I think that's the point.
Yeah,
but that was written by Rhonda Byrne,
who is
in and she wrote The Power, and what she's most famous for is The Secret.
Gotcha.
So I just think that those passages kind of show where you could probably go to a church, and I think later in this video that Miss Dougherty, she like spouts some stuff from some Houston minister that we know that has a lot of money and has big stuff, right? That he says much like this, and how it talks about the power of words, and what the I am is that you can heal yourself, you can heal others, you can manifest all your money, you can I
think that's the biggest
problem prosperity gospel we talked about
those guys
weeks
is
back.
They're big on prosperity, they're big on New Ageism, right? And that's the question is, are they actually teaching gospel or are they teaching New Ageism? I think that's usually the knock on those guys, right?
Right. So if you're a young person or somebody looking into the church, and the first thing you do is step into a church that teaches, the prosperity gospel and manifesting and the laws of attraction, like in The Secret, like are you really being taught the Bible? And if the only Bible you've ever read was when you were 12 and rocking through the King James version, which is, it's a pretty version, but when you're small, you know what the hell that stuff means, right? All the these and thous and whatnot. And it's written in this beautiful poetry, and then you have a minister that spouts all this filflar and filth.
And he says something like he could use the King James version to correct the Greek that it was translated from.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right, right. So
Uh,
I'm thinking that our Christian world is flooded with New Ageism, and it's hard to differentiate
certainly
between
is.
one and the other. And those passages were just super cherry picked to look like they could be either way. And, you know, and even a strong theologian like Brian Irvin might get one wrong. So- but I'm sure if he
Yeah.
read the book, he'd be like, what the
Yeah. You
this
know what's
book I need?
crazy is the funny thing about like the secret, the
Right.
whole power, what is it? The power of attraction, law of
Yeah.
attraction or whatever. The funny thing is from a functional point of view, I agree with it. In the sense that if you're a negative person, you will attract negativity because you put so much negativity out. That's how people will respond to you. Right? Like it's not that you can manifest it, but like if you walk around being a jerk, people are going to act and treat you like a jerk, and then you're going to be like everybody's a jerk, and it's like no, actually you're the jerk, but you're
That's true.
creating this environment in
I-
which jerkiness abounds.
I've tested
Right?
that. It's true.
Yeah,
Brian's like, I seen it.
I synced it.
I was
synced
there.
Delani today posted a video, and it's basically a bunch of written by Brene Brown, who's written, so Oprah loves her, right? But she was talking about your light, and if you hang out with people that try to multiply your light,
Mhm.
and you are surrounded by people who understand and appreciate your light, then your light will be nourished. And but if you hang out with people that just blow your light out,
Yeah.
And I think that goes with what you're talking about, Matt.
Yeah.
Like that whole saying that the your
5
personality
people.
is the sum of the
Yeah.
5 people you hang out with.
Yeah.
Then whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, or
Mhm.
that's why I tried to, even though I was failing high school, I tried to hang out with a bunch of scholastic academics and try to
Yeah.
think I was smart.
I mean, the thing is there can be something to this from a functional point of view, but that doesn't mean it stands up at a metaphysical or
Right.
a spiritual point of view, right? When my daughter was in high school, she was going through a tough phase, and it doesn't matter why, and I'm not going to get into it, obviously, but she was having some struggles, teenage girl stuff, right? And she had this one friend, and her friend was super troubled, like way troubled. And I remember sitting down with my daughter, and I'm like, hey, I'm a little worried about you spending so much time with that friend. She was like, but dad, she kind of needs me. And I said, hey, look, this is where I'm going to be a selfish father. And I said, and I used that same light analogy. I said, a person has so much light. And I said, and other people draw that light or they add to it. And I said, my concern is that you don't have that much light to give right now. And that girl is a black hole and she's drawing all of your light. And I'm just worried about her extinguishing your light before you're able to fully flourish and create who you need to be. And I said, not to say that that girl doesn't need help, and I appreciate you wanting to help her, but I don't know how much you can help her before you're drug into her darkness. And I didn't know how else to use an analogy to try to explain what my concern
Sure.
was, simply looking out for my own daughter's well-being, right? And while I wanted this other girl to do well, also not at the expense of my daughter. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not that good of a dad. I don't know,
Right.
like I'm not that good of a person. But yeah, I mean, these analogies I think are just ways to explain. It's probably something that if we just use religious terms, we could probably explain all of these things, and stop being lazy and stop being so, so worldly about. But it's weird that some of this stuff does have some sense of applicability,
Well,
which
I'll
doesn't mean
say
it's a cosmic
we
experience.
are, but we run on electricity, right? So that's why you have electrolytes and things that your heart beats and
Brain
blood
waves and
pumps
all that
and
stuff.
brain waves. So, and different light stimulates your brain in different ways. I know that when we lived in England, the sun was never out, so you never got vitamin D. You never got that that warmth, that light. So they used to give you what they called happy lights, which was like the vitamin D lamp that you could put in your house because during the wintertime the sun comes up at like 9:30 in the morning and then goes down like at 3 in the afternoon. So me working on shift, there was like whole quarters where I never saw the sun, like literally, right? So they would give you the happy lamps that you put inside your house to give you, some sort of UV light,
Artificial sunlight.
artificial sunlight. Um,
Did you
but
sit in, if you sat in the tub, does that you become hydroponic?
I should have tried. I could have got superpowers and whatnot. But I think there's something to that where, vibrations, music can put you in a certain mood.
I've seen that stuff where like, you play like certain types of music and plants grow
Sh-
better and whatever. I'm
Sure.
like, I don't know. But I also saw
Well,
something where they like had some theory that there was like a certain frequency of vibration that's like known to kill cancer cells. And I'm like,
I
I,
believe that.
yeah,
I
it's
believe that could be a
interesting.
thing. Right.
It's highly intriguing
Or
to me. I would
or
like it to be true
or
because then it'd be simple
theoretically, right?
as,
I don't know if we've
but
proved it.
where's Nikolai Tesla when we need him?
But there is like photon therapy for cancer,
Yeah.
right? Where you laser focus in on,
Mhm.
certain cells and wipe those things out. I So in that world, like you said, functionally, I mean, look at social media, right? So if you look at blue screens all day and then that's how you get your happiness as you scroll mindlessly, and then you get happy from watching influencers do things, and next thing you find yourself influenced by influencers, then that is that the law of attraction, or is that just being influenced?
Right.
And they
That's a fair
and
point. That's a fair
and
point.
if somebody believes in the law of attraction and then they just see it manifest through the computer screen, then they could kind of prove their own theory on how that works. Just like, if you're doing something and you prayed and something good happened, you're like, see, there's my proof that praying does work.
Mm-hmm.
Brian's been quiet a lot
He
on
has been.
this.
yeah. Well, I I don't want it to sound. I'm kind of thinking about what. I don't want to convey the picture that whether there's all the good churches that are teaching genuine Christianity, and then these New Age churches that are teaching phony Christianity. It seems like what we consider to be the good churches. I think I think these progressive and New Age, which are not the same thing, by the way. We're
Right.
kind of talking about two different
Correct.
things at a time,
Mhm.
but they thrive so much because they have so much camouflage, because the mainstream church has such a poor grasp on the biblical narrative anyway, that it's endlessly malleable. It's easy to counterfeit and make it sound like what people have already accepted as genuine Christianity. I mean, if your garden variety Christian thinks that the whole thing is about dying and going to heaven as a disembodied spirit anyway, I don't think I don't think buying into New Ageism is that much of a corruption by comparison. I mean that it's just I think it's the same kind of error that we've always been in for the past several centuries anyway. It's just a matter of degree. The main problem is that we're missing that main narrative that we don't pay attention to. So
I don't know. I'm going to push back on you, Brian.
okay.
You've said you've been 4, 5, 10 episodes, whatever. Whenever we talk about the modern church, you and not wrongly, by the way, you rightly bring up this misunderstanding or conflation of heaven and what that means. But I would suggest, I would argue that if that was the only thing that a church or a Christian got wrong, it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't change the outcome. Just because you think you're going to end up one place and end up in another place, so what? If you're doing all of the other stuff right and you've got all of the rest of it understood properly, that one little mistake is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's not like thinking heaven versus Eden means you're not a Christian and you're not saved and you're going to hell.
In terms of, yeah, when I was a brand new Christian, and I thought it was about that, I believe that my relationship with God was sincere and genuine, and had I died then I wouldn't have been, I don't think he would have rejected me for eternity. But if that's all we care about is individual outcome, so let's step back for a second. I disagree with the premise of what you just said. I don't think it's one thing that we have wrong. That's a symptom of a far
I
deeper
didn't say it
problem.
was only one thing. I
Right.
just made the point that you bring up that one thing consistently as the example.
Okay.
And I'm trying to make the argument that that one thing wouldn't be enough to make the church apostate.
Except that
That
I think that that one thing gets the fundamentals wrong. So if you
Yeah.
have all of the fundamentals wrong, then somebody can swoop in with the same idea of being the disembodied spirit and going to heaven and all the oneness, and you become one with the universe and you are the universe. That's an easy transition from all of the hard stuff that you read throughout the Bible, right? So if someone's like, hey, this sinning thing and this judgment thing and this killing thing and this hating homosexual things and genocide thing and and then our whole episode of the problem with evil. Well, New Age has a simple answer to the problem with evil where it's just an illusion. Evil's
Yeah.
not real, right? So that's not real. And if you're enlightened enough to know that that's not real, and you become one with the peaceful universe, then none of that stuff matters. And I think that's where you get tripped up. If you don't have the right fundamentals to ground you, then it's really easy to just take that turn to New Ageism because it's so comfortable.
Yeah, and
that's
I don't
fair.
bring that I don't bring, and I agree with Dre. It's that's kind of the point I'm getting at, is that if that's what you think Christianity is, then you're missing the fundamentals. You have a different narrative in mind for what Jesus was about, what he came to do, and what he was teaching to.
See, that's where I'm pushing back because
Okay.
I don't
Right.
agree with that. Let me explain because I know where you were going and I want to cut you off to make this point quickly. You could agree. So let's simplify. Let's make sure we're on the same page, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. What did Jesus come here to do? Jesus came here to complete and win and begin the the coming of the kingdom of God, right? Like we're going back DCW, scattering the peoples, multiple sons of God, different religious sects. God focused on Israel. Jesus came back. Now it's time to bring all of the countries back. It's time to put everything under God's rule. It's time to make nigh the kingdom of God, right? Like that was
Sure.
what Jesus came here
Right.
for. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I want to simplify it, but I don't want to yada 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 it. Can't yada 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 Jesus. Having said that, having said that, a person could agree that that was why Jesus was here, and then thinking that, but by doing that, that just means I get to go to heaven. That is, a person could be a Jehovah's Witness and say, there's only this many people and we got to do these things, or, a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever different type of denominational pathing, right? And have a clear idea of what Jesus was doing here, what the kingdom of God means, and simply that last little part. And if I'm part of the kingdom of God, I get to go to heaven as a disembodied spirit
Well,
rather than Eden comes down onto earth. I feel like you could have all of it except that one little piece, and it would be wholly irrelevant, which is
yeah,
kind of
but
the
I don't,
opposite of what Dre said.
I don't think that's an accurate representation of what most people believe. Most people treat the kingdom of God on earth as an afterthought. The goal is getting to heaven when you die. That's what everybody's thinking about. That's why they want their hand stamped with their fire insurance. let me back up a little bit.
Even the people that talked to Jesus, that was their question to him.
Give me an
Zechariah.
example.
Zechariah. Playoffs. We're talking playoffs?
Right.
Nicodemus, you mean?
Nicodemus, yeah. Sorry.
Well,
Freaking Nicky. I
I
always
don't
think a
think
secretive name when I hear Nicodemus.
I don't think Nicodemus was asking, you know, what's heaven like when I get there as a disembodied spirit. I think he was, but we've had that conversation before.
Sure.
Might have been.
So we're at war, right? Like that's the church is at war with the spiritual forces of darkness for this world, right? Like that's what the Great Commission is: go and make disciples of all nations, baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching you to obey everything I've commanded you. But we're in a millennia long war with the devil and his minions, and God has pronounced sentence on them in Psalm 82. That's to go back to the divine council worldview. I have said you are gods, you are all sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere men. So their sentence is pronounced. When Jesus returns and sets up God's kingdom on earth, they get thrown into the abyss. That's the end for them. They know they can't avert that. They know that's inevitable. What they can do is keep the clock running. They are effectively immortal as long as they keep the church from doing what we're supposed to be doing. For the church to do what it's supposed to be doing, we have to be on the same page. We have to understand collectively what we're supposed to be doing, what the church's role in the world is. By focusing it on, well, we don't have that sense of ourselves, largely because we have this different narrative. We have it's this, instead of transforming this world, instead of advancing God's kingdom on earth, it's escapism. It's escaping to some other world. And so we have all of these Christian virtues that like we all recognize that in a war you have to sacrifice for the war effort. If we were, in World War II, people would do paper drives and metal drives, and they understood that resources were scarce for the war effort. They were willing to make that sacrifice, but it was practical. For the church, though, we have virtues like sacrifice, but it's kind of abstract. Like it's not to any practical effect. We've kind of turned it into something that you kind of deny yourself for the sake of denying yourself, because that's what being Christ-like is. Like there's no concrete execution to it, because our preoccupation is not on the war that we're supposed to be fighting. It's on our individual salvation to this otherworldly afterlife. And it's so all these things that should be concrete and practical and that we should be doing in this world, we've kind of made them abstract, and they're kind of they're all kind of notional. We pay lip service to them in a yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus kind of way, but there's no like practical outworking to it. Does that make sense? I don't think I explained that very well, but
I think I know where you're going. I mean, I'm unconvinced, but that doesn't mean you didn't make your point.
You're unconvinced of what exactly?
Of your counter to what I was getting at, that I get the, if you're living, see, it goes back to whenever you, and I don't mean to sound like I'm directing the attack at you, because I'm not, but I've got to address specific things that you say. So you say the fire insurance, and I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And you say the disembodied spirit heaven thing, but going back to faith without works is dead. If a person was actually living for the sake of being a Christian, not simply punching their fire insurance card and then checking out.
Yeah.
one could still be off on the disembodied heaven, but still be living every bit of the life and be 100%,
Sure, but
doing all the right things. That's all I'm trying to say is
right. But
a
I
person
want to
could be
home in
doing
on
everything else right.
But I want to home in on where we're talking past each other, though. Like you keep trying to justify the individual to say, no, a person could believe
Justifying
that.
anything.
Well, but you're saying that an individual person could believe X, Y, and Z, but as long as they're being faithful and sincere and otherwise, then they're still good with God. Fine. Like I'm not saying people are going to hell if you believe in the disembodied afterlife thing. That's not my point. My point is that as a collective, the church, because we've lost the plot, because we treat the God's kingdom on earth as an afterthought, as something we don't have anything to do with. We're just sort of in a holding pattern until Jesus comes back. With our main focus on escapism, we're not doing our job. We're not thinking in terms of fighting the war and advancing the kingdom here on earth. We're
which
thinking in
keeps the
terms.
clock running on the Satan side. So the
Exactly.
fact that the humanity is not where it's supposed to be, then why would Jesus come back?
Right. And this kind of goes back to the topic of the day, the progressivism. It's kind of mutated from what I had in mind when I first pitched it a while ago, but
well, we also lost a full episode, so
yeah,
that happens.
because of the eclipse.
Whoops.
Fun fact.
Yeah. So yeah, so political progressivism. It's this idea that by advancing the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're and through basically socialist programs, we're going to achieve this utopia of perfect equality and wealth distribution. That's what they want to progress to. It's this glorious future of perfect government and everybody in a perfectly integrated society. Also, you have New Ageism. The goal is to bring about a new age of spiritual enlightenment.
The dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Right. And then in Hinduism, you have the age of Kalki. This when the final avatar of Vishnu comes to turn the earth into a paradise. Buddhism, you have the age of Maitreya, the world teacher. He'll be the final Buddha who will bring about this age of paradise. You have all of these different ideologies with essentially a messianic vision that they stole that from Christianity. That's actually the messianic age that the Bible teaches that the church is supposed to be working to bring about. But we kind of treat it like an afterthought, and it's like the enemy has sort of set up all these different counterfeit versions to kind of to double down on the idea that this is a non-Christian idea, that it's those pagan religions, it's those liberals that want to bring this about. Meanwhile, we're kind of neglecting it because we're thinking about going to heaven when we die. Transforming this world is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, a lot of people say. But no, and also whenever we do talk about the apocalypse in the biblical sense, it's always a bad thing. It's always it's always doom and gloom, and it's described as the end of the world, when no, really it's the beginning of the world. It's the beginning of history. It's when humanity is perfected.
No, and I'm still with you on all of the bulk of this, right? Like here's what I'm trying to get at. There's two different thoughts. So let me explain both thoughts before you respond.
Okay.
On one side, the last thing you just said about the apocalypse being a good thing and end of the world, and how the, you know, how that all comes about, and whether it's amillennial or, post millennial and all that kind of stuff, pre-trib, post-trib, whatever. All of that can be addressed. Just put a pin in the heaven concept.
Okay.
For either types of apocalypse to occur, whether it's heaven or Eden, all that other stuff has to happen anyway. Jesus has to return before either, whatever that fork is that's accurate or not accurate. And by the way, I'm on your page with it.
Okay.
But even if it's the other way, all of the other stuff still has to happen. So I don't think it's fair to characterize it as if we have to figure out that it's going to be an Edenic rebirth in order to do all the things to make Christ come back, because Christ will also only come back to take us to heaven if we do all those same things. Like literally the entire playbook is the same, with the exception of, are we going left or right at the moment of apocalypse, or however you want to describe that event. So to me, I think
I don't think I understand what you're saying.
Really?
when Jesus comes back,
Right.
the apocalypse will start, and then the world is whatevered.
Okay. Sure.
Okay. And then I'm saying whatever because it's either we're going to be raptured to heaven or heaven comes to earth. But either of those two events are predicated on Christ's return.
Okay. Sure. Okay.
And all of the things that we've talked about that have to happen are the same, irrespective of whether it's heaven or Eden. And so I feel like you're making too big of a deal on knowing that it's Eden, not heaven. The rest of it's what's important. The end state is simply the end state.
Right. Okay.
So that's first thought. That's my first thought. I have a second point that I think is important.
Okay.
I'm taking in components of feedback that I've received personally from listeners, right? That struggle with the heaven versus Eden thing. And it doesn't matter. This is the point that I want to make to you specifically, but I think for us broadly. If a Christian is greatly interested in learning all the right things and figuring out the right parts and piece parts, and there's a person over here saying, you've got it all wrong. First of all, you're not even going to heaven. And then there's a person over here going, yeah, you are. Don't listen to that nut job. But the Christian already believes, for whatever reason, in heaven. It seems to me that it would be easier to get them to just buy into all the other parts and focus your energy there. I'm basically getting into like law of diminishing returns with regards to proselytizing, right? And trying to help Christians find the right path. If we were to simply say, let's put a pin in that. Don't worry about where we're going. Let's focus on what to do now in the war that I agree with you that we're in the midst of, right? The purpose is bringing Christ back, allowing that to happen, set the stage, whatever the right language or taxonomy is for that, rather than focus on this thing that maybe a person can or can't wrap their mind around. Like,
so you're saying that our end state should be maybe a two-parter, where our end state needs to be to get Christ to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we accomplished that mission, now we can tell you about where you're going in the end. Like,
right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. 311, you made it.
So
right. But I think that we're not setting the conditions for Christ to come back if we have the wrong end state. And we shouldn't have the end state of, or just the goal of Christ to come back for Christ to come back for Christ's sake, right? Like our end state should be all of us fulfilling this promise. Christ did his part by dying for us. Now it's time for us to fulfill our end of the bargain and get this thing done. I think instead of saying, hey, you're wrong, you're not going to heaven, I think a better tactic will be, hey, this is better. That thing you
Well,
heard about the disembodied spirit, this is better on this side. The Edenic side is a better thing, and let me tell you why. And it's going to take some study and some sacrifice and some, and some knowing.
um, yeah, there's a relationship between understanding the end state and doing what we have to do for Jesus to return. Those are not unrelated things. Jesus said, "This gospel of the kingdom must be preached to all nations, and then the end will come." This gospel of the kingdom. If we don't even know what the gospel of the kingdom is, we can't preach that to all nations. Um, if we're not preaching that to all nations, then the end doesn't come. Then this goes on indefinitely. And in fact, Christianity is not growing anyway. It's dying in the West largely because it's impotent, has no power, because we're not really preaching the gospel. But I always say that our eschatology, we should our ecclesiology, like our understanding of the church and its operation, it should be post millennial. Like the three eschatologies are amillennial, which is the belief that there is no millennium. Like that, there's amillennial, postmillennial, premillennial. They all have to do with when people believe Jesus will return with regard to the millennial reign that you read about in the book of Revelation. All millennials believe that there is no millennial reign, that that's the church age. And this is the standard Catholic belief. Because a lot of the prophecies about the Messiah coming involved a literal national Israel existing. And for most of the church's history, it was unthinkable that there would ever be a literal national Israel again. So they kind of spiritualized all of those prophecies and decided that that applies to the church, not to national Israel. And that's where you get amillennialism. Postmillennialism is the belief that the church will achieve this kind of worldwide golden age of Christianity holding sway in the world, and then Jesus comes back at the end of it. Premillennial is Jesus comes back to reign on earth to establish that kingdom. I always argue that our ecclesiology should be post-millennial. We should be working to bring that about. We should be working to spread the kingdom of God on earth, but with the understanding that we have an enemy who's going to resist us, and we won't be able to do that. And then Jesus will return when this gospel of the kingdom has been preached to all nations. But to do that, and it's not just delivering the word of mouth of the gospel to all nations. It's fulfilling it. It's living it out ourselves and advancing it that way. We have God's nature in us, and we're supposed to make every effort to cultivate his nature. And that's what discipleship is. That's what the church is there to do. And we're supposed to be equipping our fellow Christians for how to advance the gospel. We're simply not doing that because we don't really, we have a narrative that treats that as optional, as it's kind of an afterthought. And when I bring up the whole dying and going to heaven thing, it's not, my issue is not that, hey, if we just corrected that, then all would be well. That is not my point at all. My point is that is the fact that so many people think that's what Christianity is, the fact that so many preachers think that's a huge red flag that we're just not reading the Bible. We're just not.
So Brian, help me out, because you're saying a lot of things, and I had the sense that you're trying to get me to a point, but you're not getting me there. And I don't know what's not clicking. It might be on my side, might be on your side, but I'm not there. So you're trying to make a point, I think, that the fundamental breakdown in the eschatology, we'll use that for a lack of a better term, And for anybody that thinks it's a unnecessarily big word, it really just means the understanding of how end times comes about, right? And it's all tied to
Yeah,
what we're
it's
talking about
study
here.
of end times. Yeah.
So we're really talking about eschatology by talking about heaven versus Eden. Are you saying, I think what you're trying to tell me is that if the problem is that if everybody believes in going to heaven, they get to go to heaven no matter what, just by simply dying. But Edenic rebirth only happens when the end time prophecy is fulfilled, and that's up to us to do. Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't
Because
word it.
that's a little bit of a different angle.
I wouldn't word it exactly like that, but in essence, yeah, the church
Because
has a
that's
job to
different.
do.
That's a different thing to say, right? Because if we say soul sleep, which whether that's what happens or not, right, or whatever, but we might all be in soul sleep for a really long time versus being able to wrap
You
this bad
blew
boy up,
it.
right, rather than just
The
being able to
Messiah
wrap this
came and you blew it.
being able to just wrap this thing up in a couple hundred years and move on with the good times, right?
I think we could do it in our lifetimes.
Right, but my point is that's very different than if somebody's like, yeah, we're just going to go to heaven and chill, so what's the big deal? Just do your little part and you get to go to heaven and it's all great. I think that makes the point a little more simply than a long dissertation on amillennialism versus premillennialism and that kind of stuff. I don't mean to belittle what you were trying to explain, but I had to get all of that so I could kind of understand the point that you're trying to make. And I can kind of dig that, right? If that's the point you're making, I think that makes sense
Because
because
if
I
that's
probably
not the
never really
point,
thought about it in those terms.
in the way I think about it, if that's not the point, then what the hell is Satan doing? He lost, right? But if he can prolong the battle
To potentially
indefinitely,
indefinitely to maybe forever, right?
then
Like, yeah,
then he's
Yeah.
then he's winning, right?
right.
Like,
Yeah, and look outside the window, and he's
Satan's outside my window.
he's doing pretty well. Just like look at the world outside your window. He might be. I don't
I don't
know.
want to look outside my window then.
He's actually probably very handsome. Like
he
you
well he
probably
doesn't.
like looking at him.
I think he's probably in like Gaza or someplace. He ain't more
I mean,
Oklahoma.
well, he's definitely not in Georgia.
he was.
Yeah,
He
and
got the
Charlie
hell out of
Daniels kicked
there.
his ass out of it. He
Yeah.
done told you once, you son of a bitch.
Like that's why Satanists are stupid anyway.
Right.
He lost to a redneck fiddle player. Like, get out of here.
And I'll tell you,
Mm.
Satan's band was dope. So the demons, they were like let out the evil hiss.
They were way
They're
better than
like, boom,
Satan.
their bass line was smooth, like, and they're looking at Satan like, hey, so hitting that fiddle. The fuck is that? Like, chicken in the bread pan, picking up. We lost to that
Right.
because you can't fiddle. I had a sweet ass bass line and everything.
Right.
Satan sucks.
Stupid devil.
Yeah, I'd be careful about that.
But telling
Which
Satan he
part?
sucks.
About mocking the devil.
Nah,
I wouldn't do it.
Why is that?
I mock him on a regular basis.
Why? No, this is a genuine question.
Uh,
And that it's not for me because I want to. It's just an interesting thought that I haven't heard a lot of. So what is this thought?
I'm not composing my thoughts very well today, so I'm just going to go to the source.
The
Bear
secret,
with
the
me.
source, the universal source, God.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
If we shouldn't mock Satan, we certainly shouldn't mock God.
I'm mocking New Age God.
Nice save.
I'm mocking her.
In the very same way, on the strength of their dreams, these ungodly people pollute their own bodies, reject authority, and heap abuse on celestial beings. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, did not himself dare to condemn him for slander, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." Yet these people slander whatever they do not understand, and the very things they do not understand by instinct, as irrational animals do, will destroy them. So the archangel Michael was. He was
He's kind of a badass, and I am not.
Yeah, and he would
Okay.
he didn't he didn't mouth off to the devil.
That's not what I heard it say. It said don't slander him.
Okay.
I'm not trying to word pick. I'm saying
Oh,
what I heard in that verse was that even Michael knew not to slander the devil, meaning don't put words in his mouth because you can't
just tell the
Well,
truth.
you can't make him into something he's not, or beat him at his own game, because he is still a fallen angel that has a certain level of power.
I
I
let
mean,
me
isn't
see
that
what
what
the
that
Greek word
says?
is. I'm going to see what the
Yeah.
actual.
Please.
What's
This
strong have
this took a this
what's
took a
strong
turn that
yeah
I did
what's
not
strong have to
anticipate.
say about it? What's the verse, by the way?
Jude 1:9.
Can I say Satan sucks? That's what it's.
Ask Quora. Ask.com.
The Greek is blasphemous. Even the archangel Michael, when he disputed with the devil over the body of Moses, did not presume to bring a blasphemous charge against him, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So it's not specifically slander, but it's just like it's he respected his station and power. He left it to the Lord to.
Right. But so the question is, and I'm being serious here, is this before or after Satan's fall? Because wouldn't that also matter?
What do you mean by
Because at one
Satan's
point,
fall?
Asatan was still part of the divine council, right?
This was when he disputed with him over the body of Moses. So this would have been
Before the fall. That didn't. And aren't we working under the assumption that Satan fell when Christ was born? Isn't that
Satan
kind
fell
of
in
the
1914. I was
no.
Jehovah's Witness.
Are you talking about the passage from Revelation 12 where he was cast out of heaven and swept a third of the. No,
Yeah.
this is in the end times.
Right. I know, but I've heard the interpretation that that was actually at Christ's birth. That because when Christ was born, that's when they all realized that God was changing the game and bringing his kingdom up fully together, and that was when the last big revolt happened.
So
That's
what, like,
that's the loose understanding I've always had of demonology.
yeah, I'm not sure the timing matters though. Like, I think the principle is that you're like, if you read that passage in Jude, he's making a general point based on this specific instance, like these about
Or does that mean that you allow those dark thoughts that you can be corrupted to the dark side? Where even Michael could have been swept away under Satan's little 1/3 army if he would kind of play his game with him as well.
I don't know the specifics. I don't know the.
He just
I
said,
don't.
"Don't fucking do it," so I'm not going to do it. That's what
Yeah.
Brian's saying.
Yeah. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think we have enough information about what angels can or can't do, or what the.
Brian Godawa told me what angels can and can't do.
All right. Well. All right. Maybe he knows something I don't.
Shout out, Big B.
It's
Right?
I
entirely
like your
possible.
books.
Right? Big fan.
Yeah.
Are you reading Enoch yet?
Me?
I mean, I cracked it. I haven't.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm
Yeah.
like chapter 5 or something.
I need to spend some time on it.
I've been reading the Three Body Problem trilogy.
That is not.
It's different than.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
It is a touch.
Yeah. So did we solve all the world's problems? Did we tackle progressivism? I'm not sure what our
We tackled it. I
objectives
don't know
were.
if it'll stay down for the count, but we definitely
Yeah.
took a swing at it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I just don't know enough about progressive Christianity. I think I got the wave tops enough that I don't want to be it. I don't want to do it.
I feel like we owe the audience a bit of an explanation.
We did a perfect show last
we-
week. It was a damn good show.
Yeah.
Damn good show.
And it was hilarious. We talked about Keanu Reeves,
We
Bill
did.
and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Yeah.
my mother. So like Like lots of stuff. It was just great. It was grand. And
And I screwed it up.
we
Because
lost it into the it's gone. It's gone
Because
forever.
Matt did not push the record button. We
I
did
was-
an entire 2.5 hours just talking.
I
And
was going to blame the eclipse. I was going to just say that because of the eclipse, we
neither
don't have it.
Andrae nor Brian even noticed that it wasn't recording, and we didn't even lend a hand. So it's a team fail, and you didn't get your show last week.
Yeah,
You know,
it was on this topic, and I feel like we probably did a better job last week. I do say so.
I don't know if we did a better job. It was probably a more fun job. I think
Yeah.
we had a good time.
I,
This is
I don't,
good.
I don't I don't think wrapping up a show by telling people how bad the show is makes a lot of sense.
Well,
Hey, don't ever listen
that out.
again. This is
Go ahead and edit that.
if you're listening this long, why? Like, what?
Well, I
what
just
are you
With your
doing?
life.
I just want people to know that we appreciate them taking the time to listen, and we don't take it lightly. So we want to do a good job, and I apologize if we didn't do that, and so yeah, that's all.
The code
Okay.
the code is 6567. All right, boys.
All
All
right.
right, very cool. Any closing thoughts there, Brian?
No, I'm tapped out.
We do like the Dan Patrick show. Fritzy, what I learned today.
I've got a closing thought. So we talked a little bit about progressivism. I actually had a couple of questions we didn't get to, but that's okay. This might, I don't know if you guys saw this. This came across my news feed. Randall L. Kennedy, who is the Michael Klein professor at Harvard Law School, wrote an op-ed piece in the Harvard Crimson, and I'm simply gonna give you the last couple of sentences. It would be hard to overstate the degree to which many academics at Harvard and beyond feel intense and growing resentment against the DEI enterprise. Then he closes with the realities surrounding mandatory DEI statements, however, make me wince. The practice of demanding them ought to be abandoned both at Harvard and beyond.
There's hope.
So apparently professors that are trying to get jobs at Harvard specifically and most other colleges are required as part of their package to write a DEI statement. They basically have to be like, here's my resume, here's the schools I went to, here's what I'm good at, here's what I like to teach, and here's why I think DEI is good. And this is how you get hired at Harvard. And this guy's saying this is terrible. And he even says, I'm a leftist, blah, blah, blah. And I care about these things, but the way we're doing this is stupid and broken.
Yeah, it's
I just thought that was interesting.
yeah. So what were your questions that you didn't get to ask?
It would dig us back into the show. It's just when we were talking about progressivism. I'll ask the questions and we'll cue them for next time. One, this group, the three of us, talk about the left as being bad and progressivism is bad. Wouldn't it be easy or correct to argue that, say, oh shoot, I went blank on his name.
Joel Osteen,
No,
Mark Driscoll, Barack Obama,
my one of my favorite presidents,
Mallard Fillmore,
Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive president, right? It didn't make him destructive, and he wasn't trying to undo and damage the United States of America, but he was pretty progressive in the way he did things and his approach. And similarly, one could argue that for his time, the man known as Jesus Christ was pretty progressive with regards to how he was approaching and trying to deal with the people of the ancient Near East. So I had these thoughts.
I think we have a topic for next week.
I had these thoughts when Brian was talking about, progressivism and I forget the phrase you were using, but the
Utopianism.
The lie of them or something like that. You were saying the deceit of progressivism or something like that.
The conceit.
Conceit. That's right. You were saying conceit. But those were the two thoughts that I had. I was like, I mean, progressivism in of itself isn't a bad thing. It's relative to what it is it's trying to progress. and
Well,
the means through which it does it.
well, the problem, and this is like a a closing thought.
Right.
I'm not going to launch into a monologue. The problem with it is that it's one thing to argue that, hey, we should be going in this direction. We should have this as an idea, and these are the steps we need to get there to get to this desired end state. That's one thing. Just calling your ideology progressivism and declaring that
Right.
anyone who isn't on your side is against progress, well, you're just bypassing debate and
Right. It's just like
assuming.
saying you have to be tolerant and accepting of all things, except you over there. I'm not tolerant of you because you're not tolerant
Right.
of all these things.
Right.
Like, okay,
That's fair.
well, yeah.
It's a mind trick. It's a rhetorical device for arrogating power to yourself and to your cause. So I mean, obviously, I'm on the side of progress. It's just we have to agree on what that means, and somebody doesn't get to appoint themselves the lord of progress and decide that they're in charge and demand everybody go along with it, which is what progressives do. So, yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. All right. Very
Dre,
cool.
you have a closing thought?
No. Yeah, I think I said what I had to say. If you want to drop me a line, tell me what a dumbass I am. You hit me up at Instagram at Super Dre. My DMs are open, and again, I've gotten zero DMs concerning this show. Got plenty of DMs, but nothing about this show. so so
You get DMs from me all the time.
yeah, I mean, so there's lots of reels sent all over the place, launched from my spot, and I receive them as well. But no, nobody called me a dumbass. Nobody told me I'm brilliant. Nobody saying my headphones look stupid. Nothing. Like I don't
You're
know.
speaking of progressivism, you're getting progressively blacker the last couple of weeks.
Well, I
You
mean,
do look you do look
the
darker.
sun is coming out. I am a melanated soul, so uh, so with that, I will say, stay curious, stay enlightened, even though we don't believe in New Ageism. And we'll see you next week. God bless.
See you guys.